Hi everyone, my name is Alois Mombwige. I'm a session chair of this presentation, which will be presented by a Max Planck PhD student by his name Arturo Cueva Temprana. His presentation is based on technological adaptations to environmental instability at Ewass Oldupa in Tanzania. You're most welcome, Arturo. It's your time.
Okay, thanks Alois for the introduction, and thanks to the host and to everyone that is gathered here today to attend to this series of talks. So as Alois mentioned, I'm working here at the Max Planck Institute for the Science of Human History in Jena, Germany, and I'm working under the Stone Tools Diet and Sociality project, which is led by Dr. Julio Mercader, and here in collaboration with the Max Planck and Dr. Michael Petraglia. So basically, we are working at Oldupai Gorge. So in the talk of today, I'm gonna do a brief summary on the recent findings that we did in our last fieldwork season and the work that I am specifically conducting regarding the stone tool technology that we found at the Ewass Oldupa archaeological site. So just to make a little bit of history, this is not. Joachim, the PowerPoint is not moving. Now, sorry. So yeah, to make a little bit of history and to locate ourselves, like Oldupai Gorge is located in the northeastern part of Tanzania, in the Ngorongoro conservation area, like eastern side to the Serengeti Plains. We can see the detail here in the map. And it's kind of a very important place, a paleoanthropological landmark, if you will. European work at the gorge began in the 1910s, but it's mainly famous due to the job initiated by the Leakey marriage from the 1930s onward. Here on the left, we can see kind of a little bit of an historical development of the research conducted there. The highlights, if you will, of the research. So Oldupai Gorge, it's a place of significant importance due to the recovery of several hominin species, including four different species, from Homo habilis, Homo erectus, Homo sapiens, and the oldest Paranthropus boise. And the work has been continuated during kind of 90 years, non-stop, conducted by different teams. And always leading to new and very exciting discoveries. It's kind of a very special place because of the excellent site preservation that it has, with a high and high resolution geological exposure that allows a tight stratigraphic control. And it has also yielded some of the several of the most old evidences of technological behavior in the hominin lineage. So in that sense, it's a notorious place to work, and yeah, can be summarized, as I said, in these kind of key features. So our particular work regarding Oldupai is a little bit innovative, at least in the geographical aspect. Why is that? Because as we can see here on the map, most of the work has been conducted in the main gorge that we can see here, specifically in this area that is called the transect. This is where all the classic sites like DK, FLK are located, and little to none attention has been paid to the Western Gorge, which is where the arrow is located. This whole branch that goes west here. The geolocalities have been defined, but little paleoanthropological research has been conducted. And it's kind of a notorious place. I mentioned it in the previous slide, but here in this point in geolocality 64, Blumenschein discovered a Homo habilis mandible in 2003. So it literally has all the potential to be as important as the main gorge. So in that sense, and having all of this in mind, the Stone Tools Diet and Sociality project started working on the Western Gorge in the year 2018, if I recall correctly. And there is when they found originally the geolocality 63 site of Ewass Oldupa. As I said, a little bit of work was done in 2018, but most of it was developed during the 2019 fieldwork season. So as I say here, this is an overview of the site. Ewass Oldupa is the Maasai name for this expression, the path to Oldupa. For those who don't know, the Oldupa is an endemic plant of the area. Yeah, and it's kind of the local name that we wanted to recover instead of using the traditional nomenclature that it's typical for Oldupai, with people's names and then the K for Korongo. So as I said, the main fieldwork season was developed in 2019 and yielded spectacular results for us. So basically the whole excavation was concentrated in this location where we opened 5 different trenches that were excavated in depth. And we also set the clean room for a little bit of anti-contamination work, following all the established, the protocols that were established by Julio's lab back in the University of Calgary. So yeah, the fieldwork allow us to recover a pretty decent assemblage, consistent mainly in stone tools that go up to 565, if I recall correctly, and kind of a large faunal assemblage up to more than 1,300 bones, if I remember. Obviously, all of this distribute across the different 5 trenches that I've mentioned. We also got a lot of multi-proxy environmental data from phytolith samples, leaf waxes, etc., that allowed a really cool environmental reconstruction of the area in a diachronic way, of course. And we had the opportunity, thanks to the fantastic geologists that were with that, to do a complete revisiting on the geological context. So we were able to push back a little bit the estimated ages that we had for these sites. So within all this project, these discoveries led us to publish this paper, which was kind of a big thing 2 months ago, which in science is a very long time. So yeah, pretty much this paper here, published in Nature Communications early this January, summarizes a little bit our findings. So it's up there, free access, I think, for everyone who wants to read it. And if not, I will be more than happy to share it with all of you. Yeah, so inside of all this project, my role here is to deal with the stone tools. Now, in order to work a little bit on understand how these hominin adaptive responses occurred during this period of time. So basically, Ewass Oldupa expands for, I mean, the occupation that we have identified at the Ewass Oldupa expands for almost 300,000 years. So it's kind of an interesting place in terms of the incredibly high geological, chronological, and assemblage resolution that we got. So lithic-wise, we have organized our research following kind of these 3 main questions. Now, what are the technological characteristics of each occupation phase that, as I say, expands for almost 300,000 years? If it's possible to correlate hominin behavioral changes with the environmental changes that we are also seeing during this time span, and at the end, how this particular site, this particular area, as is Oldupai, fit within the whole paleoanthropological context of the pre and post 2 million year old barrier that it's in the African context. So yeah, so I'm gonna go stratigraphically in order to speak this, to talk about this. This is all of the part that I'm going to summarize now. It's written down in a paper that it's currently under submission, is currently under revision, sorry, so that therefore the signs of no pictures and no Twitter and all of that, I'm sorry. But yeah, so phase one is the lowermost part of the sequence, corresponds what we called trench 7, and it's located right above the Nabi ignimbrite deposits that corresponds to the lowermost part of Oldupai Gorge. It's right by the riverbed. So it's really difficult to find a site that is going to be older than this particular occupation phase. The datation, relative datation, because of the geological position, is approximately 2.03 million year, and despite the huge extension of the site, we were only able to recover a kind of a small assemblage consisted on 12 stone tools, in which most of them were broken cobbles, a couple of flakes, and this really cool cores that can be summarized into multipolar, multifacial strategies. So this kind of polyhedral shapes and unifacial and bifacial strategies exploiting the angles of the cores for flake obtaining purposes. So environmentally wise, phase one occurs in a super extreme post-volcanic event that eventually led to the development of streams that led into the creation and development of a firm meadow. So this is, well, as I said, the lowermost part and the oldest ever recovered assemblage in Oldupai Gorge. So moving on to phase two, it's a little bit upper throughout the sequence. And it's located right above the CFCT zone, which is kind of 5 meters below tuff marker 1A at Oldupai. Tuff marker 1A establishes a chronology of 1.95, if I remember correctly. So we know this is located lower, but at the same time upper from the previous trench. So this kind of tightened the relative chronology around 2 million years. This phase two has yielded the largest stone tool assemblage of the entire site. It's like 180 artifacts that we recover there, covering a little bit of the entire variability that we see in every aspect of the site. No, multifacial cores, unifacial cores, bifacial cores, a bunch of flakes, most of them completely unmodified, spheroid technology, percussive materials, etc., etc. From the environmental point of view. Yeah, from the environmental point of view, the reconstruction has let us identify an open woodland system. So this is kind of the whole, following the whole kind of environment that we can find across the entire gorge by the time of the earliest expansion of the Paleo Lake, which is located right about this moment. So moving on to phase three. Phase three is pretty much by phase two. It's a little bit upper, but it also very well tightened between the CFCT and TAF 1A, so we can establish a relative chronology of around, again, 2 million year old. We have a very similar assemblage in general. The same kind of multipolar cores with unifacial cores, with bifacial cores, spheroid technology, a lot of flakes, pretty much none of retouch objects, and a whole distribution that, as I say, is kind of recurrent through the entire sequence. Environmentally wise, this phase occurs in an environment of waxy clays, that is associated with the earliest expansion of the Oldupai Paleo Lake. And yeah, this is kind of it. Phase 4, sorry, phase 2 corresponds with what we call trench 4, therefore the confusion. And it can kind of continuates with the whole characteristics that I've been mentioning. In this particular case, this phase is located through a series of multiple channels, and that probably this kind of channels, I mean water channels, river channels, and is this precisely this water activity or nearby water activity which led to the recovery of the highest faunal assemblage that we have found in the site, which with about 750 faunal remains recovered here. It has also let us recover a fair amount of stone tools, close to 100. And interestingly, this is the area of the entire sequence with the less cores recovered in proportion to the absolute number of stone tools. We only have 5 cores here, but they correspond one of each of the different napping methods that we have identified for the entire site. Phase 5, I haven't included a picture here, but well, we can, it's the smallest, it's just like a test trench that we made in the upper part of the site. And we only recovered there 15 stone tools, just small flakes, a couple of modified notches and scrapers. And it will be a potential area for expanding in future seasons. So yeah, this is kind of the technotypological summary of our findings throughout the sequence. As I mentioned, same napping methods, and therefore the same kind of cores that we have found all over the sequence. Multipolar, multifacial strategies, bifacial strategies, unifacial strategies, unmodified flakes, etc., etc. So in order to complement a little bit this more traditional technotypological approach, we wanted to include a little bit of quantitative data in order to make really inter-assemblage comparisons that were interesting for other groups that wanted to work with these materials. So we use this approach, the volumetric reconstruction method, which is kind of cool because it's grounded in geometric formulae, and it allows a pretty reliable reconstruction of the original size and volume of the stones that we are working with. So this data that we obtained through the method combined with the technotypology is what really allows us to see all the diachronic patterns on the technology on the site. In this particular case, the results of the VRM allowed us to see that hominids were most likely adapting their napping methods to the raw material constraints. So they would, for example, use larger blanks in order to manufacture their multipolar, multifacial strategies, but smaller blanks in order to develop the bifacial or the bipolar on anvil course. It also allows us to see the exhaustion patterns of the course, so we can identify that there is a continuous trend regarding the abandonment phase of the course throughout the entire sequence. So having all of this in mind, what we can see is that we have an assemblage that is completely dominated by quartzite, if I didn't mention it earlier. Other raw materials are strange with very low proportions. Quartzite dominates almost to 98% of the assemblage. There is a consistent blank selection patterns that, as I mentioned, napping methods are addressed to a specific type of raw material regarding their particular characteristics. All the stages of the napping sequence are present in all the occupation phases in the site. 7 recurring napping methods have been identified, as I mentioned, summarizing these general strategies: multifacial, bifacial, unifacial, and all of them are present in all of the phases of the site. there is a continuous low proportion of retouched species throughout the entire sequence, and the identification of percussive activities.
Arturo, sorry,
yeah.
could you wrap up to allow question sessions for you?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I'm finishing. So based on all of that, we can pretty much see that the Ewass Oldupa shows virtually no variation despite the shifting environmental conditions. So the whole change of environment is not being respond with change in technology. So now this site falls a little bit into the Pleistocene context of the era, with this kind of mixed characteristics that positions it as the last example of the older one and the most recent example of the most oldest example of the new older one. It has a little bit of everything. So in that sense, we can really see that earlier publications have addressed the older ones a problematic differentiation in three main groups: the older one, or the pre-older one, or the Lomeguian technology, then the early older one technology that is from 2.6 to 2 million year, and then the post older one. However, what we have seen with all of these comparisons is that some of this grouping is caused by differences in the proportion of the artifacts present, but not difference among the technology itself. This is kind of what we are seeing at the Ewass, where proportions might differ, but all the technological variables are consistent throughout the entire sequence. So we have 300,000 of barely no technological change. So in summary, we can see here, well, Ewass is the earliest known assemblage from Oldupai Gorge, with an unprecedented record in Africa and early Pleistocene, and with very low variability for 300,000 years. This variability, the little variability or the variability presented in many sites, can be addressed and has been addressed as a site functionality, related to site functionality, but we also need to consider the high technological efficiency that allowed these hominins to endure these highly variable environmental challenges without having to change their technology. Moreover, we need to consider cognitive constraints, because we don't know specifically which hominin species we are dealing with, as Oldupai Gorge has yielded several hominin species coexisting in Pene contemporaneous context. Sorry for the speed. I'm gonna just skip this. This is kind of the working process that we are doing. That is geometric morphometric approaches to the spheroid technology on Ewass. But if someone has a specific question about, he can or she can ask. Sorry, and I want to thank everyone here and the host, and yeah, thank you all for attending.
Thank you, Arturo. This was a great talk. I think Fergus is there to present some questions to you.
I'm afraid it is me. My name is Joachim Sayedal, and I'll be posting the questions for Arturo. We do have quite a few, so we'll try to get through as many as we can, but there may be a few that we can't get to. So first up, I work in much younger periods, the MSA and the LSA, where we often recover thousands or tens of thousands of lithics. Do you find any challenges with assessing technological behavior when the whole assemblage is a few artifacts per context?
Yes, no. So I also come from a much younger background. Like, my training was pretty much in Middle Paleolithic here in Europe. So I'm used to dealing with much larger assemblages. But this is kind of the proportions and the number of artifacts that are usual in these sites. So one at the end grows to work what we have. At the same time, I can only say that of course, as much sample you have, the more reliable all your assessments are going to be. But yeah, I cannot say anything much than that.
All right. Next question. What can lithic analysts do to attract students? It seems that young scholars prefer to specialize in other analytical techniques. Bit of a tough question.
This is one of our favorite topics nowadays. It's true that it looks like stone tool analysis is decreasing in interest nowadays, and the only thing that someone that is willing to pass the knowledge could do is try to show it try to be honest regarding the scope and the limitations that the speciality has. It has a lot of limitations because at the end we are dealing with cultural artifacts, so it's not an exact object. So everything falls into the probabilistic category. We are never going to reach to a complete, absolute law of nature coming by analyzing lithics. However, recurrency has a point. And at the same time, it's the archaeological remains that has endured over the most number of years because of its conditions. It doesn't degrade, etc., etc. So the idea is, to me, the idea is that we are in an urgent necessity to renovate the discipline, which with more quantitative approaches that allows comparison between different assemblages, so we can a little bit overcome the traditional subjective ideas that has embedded the specialty for many years.
Okay. Let's see, we have questions for a couple more here, or time for a couple more questions rather. Let's do this one. Is the Lomecrian real? Could you share your opinion?
Yes, it is real. I mean, the artifacts are pretty real. You can, and anyone can look to the pictures and see that it's clear napping. I mean, they are all clear human-made artifacts. So I wouldn't be worried about that. It is true that has been some concerns about certain aspects of the context, the particular context where the artifacts were found. Me in particular, I can only read the paper. I don't know the specifics of the work that is conducted behind the scenes, as you might say. So I have to put my trust on them. But the artifacts are real. That's completely sure.
All right. I think to facilitate a smooth transition to the next session, this will be the last question here. And it is, do you see technological evolution within the Oldupai from 2.6 million years ago to 1.8 million years ago?
Okay. Me particularly, I don't see that much. I know it's not, it's probably not very shared opinion nowadays. Well, in fact, there is a lot of debate regarding the specific nature of the Oldupai. And the whole technological stasis for the Oldupai is a concept that has been in archaeological literature for the last 25 years. Me, I don't see it that much. I see that, in fact, this is what I said at the end of the presentation. What I see is changes on the proportion on the elements, but not changes on the elements. So here is where methodological biases come in place. Because if we look to the real technology behind the artifacts, instead of naming the artifacts, we see that the way these stone tools are manufactured are pretty much the same, from 2.6 to 1.8. And this whole variability that we can identify from one side to another can be perfectly explained by raw material constraints, raw material availability, site functionality, etc. But the whole catalog of technological abilities of these hominins doesn't seem to vary that much during that time. So I wouldn't go for a highly variable and a highly innovative technology through that time.
All right. Thank you so much for the presentation and
thank you. Sorry for the last minute rush.
No worries.
Thank you, Arturo. This was great for sure.